In this video, we'll discover how to restart a project file after an unplanned shutdown. Be sure you've watched the PantoStacker videos to better understand the alignment process prior to watching this video. We highly recommend using the painter's tape method to mark your alignment position for each pantograph row of your quilt throughout the duration of your project. We also recommend you do not remove the painter's tape you've used on each row until you are completely done with your quilt and are ready to remove it from the long arm. However, if you have to restart after an unplanned shutdown of Quilt Path and you have not left a previous alignment position marked on your quilt top, you can still orient the computer to the previous line of stitching. After an unexpected restart of the software, open your project file in Quilt Path by using the pantograph button in the Select and Sew menu. In the upper file tree, click on the Quilt Path folder. Click on your Quilts folder and select the desired file. You'll most likely be asked to set your safe area at this point. Now we need to align Quilt Path to the existing line of stitching so it can begin where we left off. First, we want to position the quilt sandwich between our APQS quilting machine's bars so we can see all of the stitching from the row we'll be using as our reference. In this case, it is row 3. It is important that we can access all of the stitching area of the pattern we'll be using to realign. Open the pattern map screen and select row 3. We need to show Quilt Path where the upper left corner of row 3 is located. Be aware this spot is just a point in space. The upper left corner of a row is essentially just a container for a pattern. We need to make our best guess, but it isn't going to be perfect. We'll help Quilt Path find the exact point in a moment. Move the needle to your best guess of where the upper left corner of the existing row is located and click on the upper left placement flag. Tap on Trace and watch as Quilt Path traces where it believes your stitching to be located for this previously stitched row. You'll see that it isn't accurate, but that's okay. Tap on Stop after a nice pointy point of the pattern. We'll use that sharp directional change in the pattern to align the machine to the existing line of stitching. Tap on Repair Pattern. Use the Trace -1 and Trace +1 buttons to watch the machine carefully. It is important that you only pay attention to the movement of the machine and not the stitching line on the quilt. Just watch the machine itself. We are watching the movement of the machine to find the place where the machine head sharply changes direction, which will identify our sharp point we'll be using as a reference. Once you've identified the point, use the Trace -1 and Trace +1 buttons to position the machine right on top of the point. Next, we want to use the nudge buttons to force the computer to align the point in the pattern with the point found on the actual stitching. Tap on the nudge buttons until the needle hovers directly over the pointy reference point we are targeting. You may want to rotate the flywheel located on the left front side of the machine with your hand to slightly drop the needle so you can better see when the needle is aligned right on our reference point. That's it! We've reoriented Quilt Path so that where it believes the prior stitching line to be located is where it is actually located. Double check your work by tapping on the Trace Forward button to watch Quilt Path move back over the existing line of stitching. If it doesn't line up, simply stop the machine right after a nice pointy point in the pattern and repeat the process. Once you are satisfied that the machine is tracing over the existing line of stitching accurately, we just need to let Quilt Path know where we want to restart. You can choose any point you like. It could be somewhere within this row, or in our case, we want to stitch out the next row of our pattern. Tap on Trace Forward and allow the machine to move through the rest of this row until it completes its tracing. Tap Sew and, since it is already at the end of an existing row, it won't actually stitch anything. Instead, Quilt Path will say, Finished row, proceed to next row. Tap on the Finished button and you'll be prompted to either advance the quilt sandwich after marking the necessary alignment locations as you've always done, or it will tell you that you have enough room to stitch out the pattern without advancing. We will tap on OK and ask the machine to move to the top center alignment point. Mark that point with painter's tape using the single stitch button. Advance the quilt sandwich as normal, tap on Continue with Placement, and confirm that we are ready to place our next row. Move the needle to the alignment hole we made and tap the center alignment button. Notice over in the pattern map, it shows we will be stitching out row 4, which was our goal all along. Restarting after an unplanned shutdown without the benefit of having a prior alignment position takes a little more time. That is why we always recommend leaving the painter's tape used for each row's alignment position on the entire quilt until you are completely done with your project.